Welcome to this DaVinci Resolve Fusion node breakdown. Today's node isn't actually a specific node. We're going to start prepping for the particle nodes. So what we're going to be doing over the next few days is we're going to take this footage right here and we're going to create particles coming out of our little rocket bike here. But before I jump into this, there's a couple things I kind of want to go over. One, yesterday, after some torturous troubleshooting with YouTube, I was finally able to get all my comments to start popping in. And so you may have noticed comments are now up, and I have slowly started responding to you guys. And first, I want to say thanks for all the great comments I've received. Thanks for the feedback, and whether it's positive or negative feedback, feedback's feedback. I love it all. Which brings me to a couple things. One, a lot of people apparently aren't a huge fan of the background music, but let me kind of explain the background music. You may or may not know we recently had a giant hurricane come through the south and destroyed a lot of stuff, and my window happens to be right next door to the main entrance for all that debris that they're compiling, all the downed trees and all that fun stuff. So all day long, it's giant dump trucks, excavators, bulldozers, and most annoyingly of all, a giant bullhorn that blows every time they want a truck to move in. This is why there's background music, to hide all that insane stuff that's going on outside my window. And I will maybe turn it down for you a little bit. And I do have the option. I run a recording studio. I have the option to go record in the studio in the live room, but that would be kind of a headache. Move my production equipment in and out and make room for all the sessions I have throughout the day. It would be kind of a pain in the butt. Or being a sound engineer also, I could take the time and go through and get rid of all that stuff in my voice. But again, that's extremely time consuming. Doable, but time consuming. So my next option was background music. But there seems to be a few that are pretty passionate about not liking the background music I use. So what I'll do is, if anyone wants to go to storyblocks.com, and this isn't a advertisement for it, I have no affiliation with them. It just happens to be where I can get licenses to be able to use on my YouTube channels. If you want to go to storyblocks.com and look for a song, you don't have to be a member to look at what tracks I have, and just post me the name. So I will start using music you all want to hear in the background. So just be realistic about it. Let's not get some trap or some heavy metal stuff going. Let's be realistic. This is kind of a learning environment. So let's keep it a little chill. Other than that, all the other comments were great. Some great feedback. One of the things I got quite a few of is showing what we're making for that day. And I can do that for some stuff, but I'm trying not to make these actual tutorial videos right now. We will get in some in-depth advanced tutorial videos, but I want to keep these actual node breakdowns. So if I start inundating everybody with multiple nodes to create something creative, we kind of lose focus of the actual node breakdown. So a lot of the times I create stuff, I'm actually just creating it on the fly as I go. So it's nothing I pre-planned, nothing I pre-made or anything. There's a few of them I did pre-make, but I will start, if I know what we're going to be doing that day, I'll start maybe making something so you can see what our goal is, what the final output is going to be before you watch it. I mean, before you watch the entire thing, and don't have to wait to the very end if you don't want. So jumping into the particle nodes. Before we actually jump into the nodes themselves, I did provide you guys with footage. So in the description, there'll be a link to my WeTransfer where you can download all this footage, not the project files, but the footage. And all the footage is basically this quick 3D scene I created with our heroine here on this bike flying down the road. And we're going to add particles behind her little rocket bike here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over how to set this up. So if you guys want to jump over, download all that footage, the next step is going to be setting all this up, and I'll start from zero and actually delete everything out so you can see what we're doing. So if you've got all that downloaded, I'm going to go ahead and delete everything out, and we're actually going to jump into the edit page. And in our settings, if you go down to your settings, I exported these images out as 2048 by 1152, so just 2K footage. So you can set up your timeline like that if you want. You don't have to, but you can if you want it to fit perfectly. And then you can go over here and new Fusion composition. And you can just make it 4 seconds because it's 96 frames long. So 4 seconds, create it, and you can pop it down here. Delete this one, and we'll start with our fresh Fusion composition and jump into Fusion. So we've got our media out. That's the only node we've got going right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in a loader node. And in your file system, you have 3 levels. We have the street and kind of the street lights. There's the girl on the bike, and then there's the city background that's in the background. That's it. So it's just 3 layers, simple, nice and easy. There is a README talking about copyright. Please don't share this stuff. But we're going to grab first our city background. And all we have to do is double click on one of them and it'll bring it all in. And what we're going to do is we're going to preset up all this stuff correctly. So we can just bring it all in and merge everything together. So we know we're going to have our regular node with our actual footage. And I'll copy this. We're going to add motion blur on these other ones, so it's not so stagnant. So we're going to bring in a vector motion blur. And we also know we need a gamut node because I just exported out standard. So we'll bring in a gamut node. So what we want to do is connect this first one to our gamut node. Go to our gamut, and on our output space, just change it to sRGB. And then we're going to input that into our motion blur. We're going to take this second city background loader node, and we're going to input it into our green input of the vector motion blur. But what we're going to do is on this, once you have this selected, if we go up to Format, Channel, we're going to change these from the composite combined to the vector X, vector Y, and vector Z. I don't know why it's named that way, but it is for some reason. But that is our vector information. So now we're going to bring in our street level. So we'll look for another loader node. And this time we're going to navigate to where we saved our street and double click. So now we have our street. And we can simply take this gamut node, hit Control C, Control V, input it. And then we can take our vector motion blur, Control C, Control V, input that. And we can take our street node, Control C, Control V, and we can input this. And this is going to start getting a little crazy once we start adding all this stuff. Now on our street node that's going into our green vector input, we're going to go to our Format, Channels. We're going to go down to vector X, vector Y, and vector Z. And look at our motion blur. And well, sorry about that. Before you actually can see anything going on with your motion blur, we need to change our channels up here apparently, because we didn't do that yet. So if we go to up here at our X channel, instead of vector X, we're going to use our red. Instead of vector Y, we're going to use our green. And same with our street, change this to red and green. And if we give that a little play so we can see what's going on. Now this is kind of a lesson learned too. If we go to the very first frame, you can see we have no motion blur because when I rendered, I started at frame 1 and rendered through. So there is no actual vector and speed information on that first frame because it was still. So anytime you're doing anything that requires motion or actual like vector data or speed data, make sure you're rendering a few frames before and then bring it in and then just alter your time. That way you have this information, because right here there's absolutely no vector data to make this blur. As opposed to if I go to the next frame, you can see it's blurred. It's blurred way too much, but it's blurred. So what we can do is we can go to the scale and we can bring our scale down so it's not so blurry, but a small light post driving fast is going to be extremely blurry, but we'll get it so we can at least see it a little bit. So now we've got those two. Now we're going to add another loader node. And this time we're going to bring in our girl/bike. So now we've got that, and we'll Control C, Control V, and copy our gamut. Put our gamut in, and we will copy our vector motion blur. Even though there's not tons of blur because our camera is sitting still on our bike, so there's not tons of motion blur, but we'll connect her up anyway, and we'll copy this bike. Paste it and bring that into our green input of our motion blur. And on this one, we're going to go to our format, channels, and bring it down to vector X, vector Y, and vector Z. So now we've got our little actress / girl in there. So now to combine all these, all we need to do is bring in a couple merge nodes. And we're going to bring our city background to the background, our street to the foreground, combine these two to our background, and our bike and girl to the foreground. And now we've got that. So this is our footage, and you can play with it. Feel free to play with it, change your blurs up, do different things. You can add camera shake if you want to add camera shake. You can do different stuff to the background, change your colors, do whatever you want. But this is our starting point for tomorrow's node, because tomorrow we will be introducing our first few nodes of the particle systems within Fusion, and we'll be going over the P render tomorrow. So I will see you in the next node breakdown. Have a good day.